Thank you all for coming. I think there's still a few seats on this side of the room. We have used every chair available. There are some refreshments in the back, some coffee, water, cookies. Feel free to get up at any time and help yourself. My name is Steve Bookbinder. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Schlesinger and Bookbinder. Our offices are at 1200 Walnut Street in Highlands. I've been in the city for about 59 years. I'm here this evening on behalf of Waban AMA Realty Ventures LLC, which hopes to develop the so-called St. Philip Neri property of 1521 Beacon Street. With me tonight are several individuals. I'm going to introduce each one, ask them to stand briefly, just so that you'll know who they are. First, the principal of Waban AMA, Michael Argyros. With Michael, he's actually at the back. He's standing up at the back. His assistant, Justin Ferris. Steve Allen, our architect. Vern Porter, our civil engineer and land surveyor. Randy Hart, our traffic consultant. And Bob Engler, our 40B development consultant. Also, my associate, Catherine Adams, is at the table here, running the projector. There'll be four aspects to our presentation, which I think will run about 20 to 25 minutes. First, I'm going to provide a brief introduction to the site and the project. Next, Steve Allen is going to speak on the goals of the development in the site and the design of the buildings. Then Randy Hart will review his preliminary traffic observations and discuss possible infrastructure improvements. And then I'm going to give a brief overview of the process. And at that point, we're here basically to hear your comments and answer questions. I think we'll play it by ear. My sense is that we'll do that for maybe about an hour, and then if people still have questions, we'll stick around as late as you want and talk to folks one-on-one. I did want to introduce, we have several public officials here this evening. First, from the planning department, Alexandra Knopf, the chief of current planning. And I'm going to mention Alexandra's role in this process a little bit later. Several members of the Board of Aldermen here, and if I miss somebody, please raise your hand. I know that John Rice is sitting right here, Alderman from Ward 5. Next to him is Deb Crosley, Alderman from Ward 5. Is Brian here? Brian Yates? I think Brian's due to be here later. Ruth Ann Fuller is here. Marcia Johnson is over here on the right. And did I miss anybody else? Okay. Oh, sorry, thank you. Bill Paley. Bill, stand up for a sec. Bill is the city's director of transportation. So let's go to the area view of the site. The site is comprised of 70,335 square feet of land. It has this is the site right here. It has the existing church building, and of course the large parking area to the rear. The site is in Ward 5 in the single residence 2 district. It was previously owned by the Boston Archdiocese, has been used as a church for many years. Most recently, it was leased to the Korean Catholic Church by the Boston Archdiocese. In late 2013, Michael's entity, Waban AMA Realty Ventures LLC, acquired the site from the Archdiocese, and in 2014, he began the development process. I think everybody's familiar with the site, but just in case, to orient you, this is Beacon Street here, and Chestnut Street, and this is the Beacon-Chestnut intersection. This is Short Street, which comes along here. Karen Road is to the back, and Montclair Road is along here. Site's in a residential neighborhood. It's surrounded by single-family homes located on each of those streets. And the site is accessed from the rear on Karen Road. The proposed development, which Steve is going to run through in greater detail, consists of an apartment building at the front of the site on Short Street, with 36 units proposed, and 3 townhouse buildings in the back along Karen Road, with 3, 4, and 5, respectively, townhouse units for a total of 12. The larger apartment building in the front would contain 7 studio apartments with an average size of 574 square feet. 14 one-bedroom units with an average size of 703 square feet, and 15 two-bedroom units with an average size of 997 square feet. The townhouses, again here in the rear, along Karen Road, would have 3 bedrooms each and an average size of 2,131 square feet, excluding the garages, which are approximately another 380, 400 square feet. The site, as you know, is in close proximity to public transportation in the Waban Square Village Center. At this point, I'm going to turn the podium over to Stephen.
Thanks, Steve. I have that. So when I first looked at the site, So when I first looked at the site, we saw things that you're obviously familiar with, but living here. One was the single church structure, and the parking area, large parking area. It has about 120 parking spaces that goes from, that just pretty much envelops the parcel there. So we had some goals when we were asked to look at the design to develop this parcel. One was to try to get the apartment buildings a single building where the church building is right there. Second goal we had was to create a residential fabric, kind of a residential buffer along Karen Road. And you'll see how we responded to that in terms of the way in which we positioned the townhomes. Third thing was that we wanted to do what we could to reduce the amount of paved area. Alongside that was, therefore, instead of having pavement, to increase landscape, green space, landscape space, as you would expect in a residential neighborhood. The fifth thing was that we wanted our design attitude for the buildings to really mesh with the fabric and the attitude of residential buildings in Neri. So go to the next slide. So what we did was we were able to create this 36-unit apartment building in the location where the church is. It's a little bit larger. The red here depicts where the church is here. So it's about 50 feet longer than the church building is right here. So we were able to get those units, 36 units in that one building. Then the 12 townhouse units we put in these clusters. This is 4, 3, and 5. And we positioned them in a way similar to what you would position single-family houses. And we gave them front yards, we gave them porches, we gave them walks. We positioned them in a way so it acted as a screen, visual screen to the parking. So you notice it's very difficult here because of the position of the buildings here, here, and here to have a visual into either the parking or even a visual to the apartment building itself because of the way in which the townhomes are positioned. You have the driveway in here that you see an edge of the apartment building, but really the size of the apartment building in terms of the visualness is obscured by the position of the townhomes. Go to the next slide. So, we talked about what about the fabric? What did we do to affect in this design to mesh with the fabric? And what we did was we decided that we would have kind of an image of a big house here. And what we did was we grouped the units more toward the center of the building so it wasn't blocking. And the scale of the building came from the 3 stories in the middle down to 2 stories on the ends. So as we were closer to the neighboring parcels, the height of the building shortened. We also began to look at what are the kinds of materials that you would expect to see. Clapboards, shingles, the kind of treatment, natural, the stone walls around the entranceways, the covered porches you see here, porches with railings here. There's another porch here. Things that give layers to the building. You notice that it's not a flat front. We moved pieces of the building, moved forward and back to give some relief to the building that helps to soften any kinds of appearances on the building. So that's where we came up with this very much larger house kind of scheme. You go to the next slide. Then we looked at the townhomes and said, okay, how do we work with the scale of townhomes? And we employed some of the same features, the same kinds of attitudes. And that is that you have the, again, clapboards, some shingles, you have roof overhangs, you have the dormers, you know, all these elements here, enclosed porches, things that help to soften and break up the scale. And yet, we have them set up so that they have the appearance of single-family houses along the street. That works in terms of having the same kind of rhythm on the site that the single-family houses on Cairn Road have now. Go to the next slide. So you see, this is a typical townhouse group. This is the 4 unit where we have the 4 elevations. This is the rear elevations you'll never see. But you have a front elevation and the 2 sides. So again, entrance doors, covered porches, again, pieces that move forward and back, small roofs, the dormers, all those kind of things to solve.
Thanks, Steve. Randy Hart will talk about the traffic issues.
Well, good evening. I'm Randy Hart from VHB. We're the traffic team working on the impact assessment. The work is ongoing and it's being developed consistent with the typical traffic impact and access standards required by the city. We have met with the city to try and talk about the study area and other aspects of the work prior to and during the work that's ongoing. While we don't have a finished product yet, I thought I'd touch on a few aspects of the work that is ongoing. Talk about what the study area is, what we've looked at, talk about the existing conditions, what we found in the neighborhood from traffic concerns, and talk about potential redevelopment and what the change in traffic was ultimately likely to be as a result of this project. And then I'll talk quickly about what potential there is for improvement to a couple of intersections which we think is in need of improvement. To start, the study area that we have embarked on is 5 locations in the vicinity of the site. The site's located here: Beacon Street, Chestnut, Oakville, Cairn, Montclair. We studied each of the locations with the blue ball. They're the locations that are really primary to getting into and out of the proposed facility. At each of the 5 locations, we conducted manual turning movement and pedestrian movement counts during 2 critical periods. The first is the commuter peak hour period in the morning from 7 to 9 a.m. The second is the afternoon commuter peak hour period from 4 to 6 p.m. It's during those 2 time frames when the combination of site traffic coupled with traffic already on the roadway is at its most critical level. So that's what we're required to look at, the time when it's most critical between the site development and traffic already on the roadway.
We're going to do questions afterwards.
Okay. In addition to the traffic volume and pedestrian counts that were conducted, we also assessed safety records from the files of the Massachusetts Highway Department at each of the 5 locations. We did so for a 5-year period so we could see any trends or deficiencies that may exist from a safety concern. And looking at the volume as well as the controls and the intersection geometry, we performed intersection operational analyses to get a performance indication of how the intersection is working. Is it working well? Is it working poorly? And that's really the datum, if you will, of the traffic study. Everything builds off of the existing condition. That's the assessment that went into the existing condition. Next slide, please. The second thing we do is look at the future with the redevelopment in place and without in place. And there's a number of factors that are looked at. But probably the most important is what the change in traffic activity is ultimately going to be at this location. As we know, there's an existing church facility on site. It's vacant today, but it was operational within the last 2 years. So to estimate the change in traffic, we institute the We utilize standard procedures by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. They provide data for these types of facilities, both residential and church facilities. This table has a lot of numbers in it, but in general terms, during the 2 peak hours that I referenced, a church would generate somewhere around 8 vehicle trips in the morning, peak hour 7 in the afternoon. And then when you add the apartments and townhouses together, the change, if you will, in traffic activity with the project in place is estimated at about 23 trips during the morning peak hour period, and then about 40 trips on the evening peak hour period. So to put that in context, that's over the course of an hour. So during the morning peak hour, that's 1 trip every 2.5 minutes. During the afternoon hour, that's 1 trip every minute and a half. Okay, so there's definitely an increase during those periods, but it isn't a significant volume increase. The other part of the discussion is obviously there's the church, and during the commuter peak hours, the church doesn't generate as much activity as a residential facility would. But during the evening, during the Saturday afternoon, and Sunday morning, of course, there's a lot of traffic activity in a short amount of time. So the difference here is that church will generate a lot of traffic in a short amount of time. The residential generates traffic over a longer period of time, and therefore less impact is typically seen in that particular entity. So, in looking at the operational concerns at the study area intersections, we've found preliminarily at least that all of the intersections actually work fairly well during the peak hours, particularly the residential streets. The only 1 or 2 that really have some level of concern is Beacon and Chestnut. I'm sure you're all aware there are queues and congestions at that location on a regular basis. And there's concern here about where Short Street comes into Beacon Street. It's an acute angle and the uncomfortable of trying to travel through there. So there's a number of features that we see that could be enhanced. First, if you look at Beacon Street and Chestnut, it's a traffic signal. It's a very, very old traffic signal. It's antiquated equipment. It operates under a pre-timed condition, which means it operates under the same timing and phasing every hour of the day, every day of the week. Okay, so it doesn't accommodate the fluctuations in traffic that you would see in the morning peak hour versus the evening, or that you would see on a weekday. So that's something that can be improved on. Also, the intersection from a pedestrian perspective isn't up to current standards. It does not meet the ADA requirements. We've already talked about the sight distance at Short Street. It's very uncomfortable. If you're approaching from the east, it's a bypass, obviously, for right turns. As you approach and you look to your left, you have to look over your shoulder to get a sense if anyone's coming in. You have to clear to make the turnout onto Beacon Street in the westbound direction. So with all that in mind, there's opportunity here to make some improvements at these locations. And the city recognizes this. In fact, at the Beacon Street, next slide please. At the Beacon Street and Chestnut Street intersection, they've identified a complete signal upgrade on the capital program for 2017. So they've identified the need for improvement, and we agree. But we think there's some other things that could be done to further enhance this location. The first is to eliminate this movement, the through movement on Short Street. Create a cul-de-sac, if you will, still allowing access to the 2 residential homes that exist there, but then create a green space and not allow through movement to this location. Instead, we would reorientate those movements to Beacon Street and add an exclusive right turn lane with a brand new signal and all the accompaniments associated with it. So we'd be a brand new signal, provide full actuation, which means sensors in the road detecting vehicles, giving priority where priority is demanded. We put timing and phasing plans in place to accommodate the fluctuations that you see both in the morning and the afternoon as well as on weekends. It would be upgraded completely to fully accommodate the ADA requirements for pedestrians otherwise. And we would provide emergency preempt at this location, giving emergency vehicles priority, which that doesn't exist at this location. And by bringing this right turn in, or all the right turns into the intersection and eliminating the through movement, you basically restore this intersection to a 3-way T intersection, which is exactly what the project is doing today. And I think the general public would have a more comfortable experience traveling through that intersection as part of that reconfiguration. So the proponent hopes to participate with these improvements if they are endorsed by the city, but we think they will make a great improvement to this area. So we are wrapping up the traffic work. We hope to be finished in the next couple of weeks, and I'm sure once we are, then it will be available for consumption. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Just a little bit about the process. We filed our application for site eligibility with Mass Housing on April 22nd. The city has 30 days within which to respond. Alexandra, I know, has something online which invites members of the public to please submit comments to her to the extent you wish to, and those will be incorporated into the city's response. May 29th is her deadline. Thank you. And Alexandra, the best way to reach you is
NewtonMA.gov. And I have some cards here I can put out on the table later.
That was a good question. We hope to receive a site eligibility letter from Mass Housing sometime in July, which would then put us in position to file an application with the Zoning Board of Appeals in August. And we would hope to have a hearing before the ZBA sometime in September. That would be an initial hearing. A project of this type, there would be several hearings to follow. That's basically what we wanted to say tonight. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your comments, answer your questions. We'll try to address your concerns to the extent that we can, consistent with our goal of providing first-class housing opportunity here. I would ask, in terms of the questions, we've got a microphone set up right in the middle of the room. I'd ask people to just go up to the mic, any order at all. Just please state your name and address. Let us hear the question. Depending on what it is, it'll be Steve or Randy or myself, and maybe Michael answering it, okay? So you can start us off.
Hi, my name is Leslie Whitball. I live at 6 Agawam Road. My question is, how long is this project going to take from start to finish?
Okay. I'll give you my best guess, and it's only a guess, and there are a lot of assumptions. You all probably know that the current status of 40Bs in the city is somewhat up in the air at the moment. The city's taken the position that it has, you know what, let's not do that. We're here to have a good dialogue. We wanted to do this. I don't want to turn this into a hand clapping thing. If that continues, we're just going to back it. The 40B, the city's taken the position that the city has reached the 1.5% level. The city's determination has already been rejected by the Department of Housing and Community Development. It's now at the Housing Appeals Committee. Don't know when they're going to make a decision. If they do, and it's not favorable to the city might appeal that to the court. So leaving all of that aside, okay, if we were on track and we had an initial hearing in September, I would say we'd probably wrap up with the ZBA about December, maybe have a decision in January, and then maybe start construction next spring. How long will the construction?
And secondly, the traffic person spoke only about the Short Street, Beacon and Chestnut intersection, but there's a very dangerous one at Oakville, which is on off Chestnut, which is a pothole street. It is not suitable for heavy traffic and trucks and so forth. So I don't know what amelioration is going to be done.
I'll have Randy address both.
And secondly, that is around a very dangerous curve on Chestnut Street where Oakville comes in.
Very good questions. The distribution of traffic is being finalized with the traffic study, but in general terms, we have a fairly even distribution from the four directions. There's about maybe 15% to the west on Beacon, about 22 to the east on Beacon, 25 to the south, and the remaining coming from Chestnut from the north. And we're still refining those numbers, so they're going to change a little bit prior to the submission, but that's generally what we're seeing thus far. In terms of the site distance issue, yes, that's absolutely true. We have identified that. We've written about it already in the study. We've had a preliminary conversation with the city, and I think everyone agrees that it is a problem location, and we're looking at opportunities for enhancements there. I don't have anything specific for you tonight to say, but other than we are looking at it, we will get back to you to the extent we can. But there are some things that can be done there in the short term.
I'm Joel Greenberg, 31 Fagan Road. more questions on the traffic study. Did you run a count on weekends this time of year when there are activities at the fields with soccer games and so on, when the streets are completely backed up? That's the first question. Second, if Short Street were to be closed, that will cause more traffic in the neighborhood, Moffat Street and so on, for people who would want to avoid that intersection. So have you considered that? And three, I have to say the numbers you showed look way, way, way too small just based on reasonable assumptions.
Great question. Yeah, the first question was, have we looked at the Saturday when the fields are in operation? We have not, and primarily because the biggest impact of a residential development occurs during the 2 periods that we did identify. We could certainly take a look at it, but I know that the impact would be less than it would be on a weekday, even though there's a lot of activity in that particular area. So if that's of great concern, it's something we can certainly take a peek at and report back to you. The second, regarding the closure of Short Street, I would agree that if you close it and don't do the necessary improvements at Beacon and Chestnut to accommodate that movement, that there would be cut-through activity. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about seeing the improvements that are necessary today enhanced by the addition of a right turn and all of the bells and whistles associated with the new signal. That intersection will operate much, much better today than it does today with those improvements in place, even with the redirection of the right turn. So there's no question about that. We'll provide you the analysis that supports that conclusion. And then, the numbers that we put up in terms of traffic generation. I can appreciate your comment on that. We don't make those numbers up. They're based on real data that's provided from all over the country and specifically in this particular area as well. We put them forward as any other consultant would, and I can appreciate there's some concern regarding that. We would expect as part of this project that, as all the other residential projects that have come to the city recently, that all of our work will be reviewed in great detail by a hired peer consultant who is looking at the city's interests. And if they have a disagreement with the number of projections that we provided, we'll have a conversation about that. But my experience is that they typically do not. We use standard methodology, the same that any other one would.
This is out by hour?
I'm sorry, we're just going to take people here.
This is by the hour, though?
Hold on one second.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, this number is for the most critical hour in the morning, the most critical hour in the afternoon, okay? 1 hour, exactly. So all other hours of the day during the commuter period, the volume will be less, okay? I'll have to get back to you. It's somewhere between 7 and 9 in the morning and 4 and 6 in the afternoon. The exact period within there I can identify for you, but I don't have it in front of me. The other thing I just want to mention, and this is important, is that these numbers do not consider the fact that there's a T station within a 6-minute walk from this location, okay? We have a right, as traffic people looking at impact analysis, to take the credit for that. In this particular instance, we chose not to, even though the proximity is so close. So they're conservative, and I know people still question it, and I look forward to a peer consultant reviewing and reporting back on their conclusions. I think they'll agree with us.
Next question, please.
Hello, good evening. I'm Monica and I also live on Fredanian Road. With regards to transportation, one question is, I'm sure you know that there's going to be construction at 128 and Route 9, and that's going to back up a lot of traffic on Chestnut for 6 years. That's the projected time for that project. Added with this amount of people that are going to be living in the area, it's going to back up traffic that's already backed up from Beacon all the way back to Commonwealth. So please take that into consideration. Already there has been 1 death there on Chestnut and Beacon of an EMT, and I hope you consider that also in your presentation, as well as I know one school child that recently broke his arm on the corner there because of snow not being able to be removed properly and because of congestion there. So there's already another apartment, similar rental place that has vacancies, the Ardmore Apartments on the Wellesley and Newton border, that has it still has vacancies, and it's also low income. And we noticed that they have a lot of refrigerators and old freezers left out, as well as mattresses. And it looks like just a junkyard there. And they had a prostitution ring that was busted there. And just was wondering what your vetting process was for the renters. And although you say that the rental units are for 1 year, the reality of similar places is that people move out after a month or two because that's all they need. So you don't want to lose money, so you keep on renting to people who rent on a month-to-month basis, even though that's not ideal. And are you doing anything for the potential, all the moving vans that will come monthly to that area? Also, I'm concerned about snow removal in the parking area, and will people be parking in the residential areas? And I noticed also that some of the traffic surveillance report was done while there was no school and no games on Montclair. So on Montclair, we've actually taken some videos that show near accidents where when they had these games, kids crossing the street, not looking, and with the increased traffic, I truly, truly fear that there will be a death in that area. So what are you doing to solve some of these issues that I have raised? Thank you.
Just to touch on when the counts were done, they absolutely were done when school was in session. We don't count when school's not in session because it's not representative of typical conditions.
Andrew's over at Carr.
I'm well aware of that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's been obviously no traffic for some time at that location, and so, you know, we have to account for that in some way, some fashion, and so the obvious way to do it within the background is to do a projection for it. That's what we did for now. Now, obviously, if it opens in the fall, I don't know if it is or not, but if it did, we could certainly validate the numbers that we used as an estimation, and then if an adjustment needed to be made, it could be made. But I don't think it would change the results, because we look at the increment between the base and what we're at, and that increment's not going to change. So that's really what we're focused on right now.
I'm not going to say anything about the Ardmore apartments. I did read the articles in the paper. I read about the prostitution ring, which was in 2008. I guess continued for a brief time. These are going to be first-class rental units. They're going to be much more akin to some of the nicer projects you see in the city, and we will do a good job in terms of getting good tenants. Next question.
Hi, my name is Nancy Gindy Butler. I live on Wyman Street. And I guess just first a comment I wanted to mention for people who are wondering what it's like to live among rental units. Wyman Street is comprised of single-family homes, double-family homes, as well as several rental apartment units. And it's a lovely street to live on, and for people who are concerned about traffic, I would welcome you to come and take a look at, I know it's different, it's a different street, a different neighborhood, but I'd welcome you to take a look. These numbers are actually seem reasonable. Many of the people, I don't know if there are people here who live in those apartment buildings, my neighbors, I hope they'll stand up and speak, but it's not an issue. And a lovely street. I just, out of curiosity, I wondered about, and I think maybe others are wondering too, what the process was in terms of the current structure that's there and evaluating whether it would be possible to preserve that in some way and build, you know, I've seen other developments like that where they preserve the old church building and then expand on it.
Sure.
Thank you.
I think that's, Steve, I'm going to take a crack, but you come up if I miss something. When we started, we actually looked, the first plans looked at trying to incorporate the existing church building. For a number of reasons, it wasn't ideal, in large measure due to the layout of the building and the structure. And it was going to take a lot of effort to try to get a relatively small amount out of the building. We also, to be honest, we've had several smaller meetings with members of the neighborhood. We've set those up under the auspices of the Waban Area Council. And in those meetings, and there were probably 20 or 25, I think, neighbors in all at one time or another, not one person really was advocating for saving that building. So let me say that. Do you want to jump in?
Well, what it does remind me, one of the things I did say in the presentation was that one of the aspects about this is that 50% of the parking that as part of this project either occurs underneath the apartment building or in the garages there. So part of being able to build a new structure allowed us to put the parking for the apartment building underneath it, which allowed us to mitigate the effect of that level of parking. The other thing was to be able to get the number of units there. I have the idea of a second building. There are a lot of things we didn't like about a second building, being closer to the residents, just not a very efficient way to do it. So it really was about how to get a real efficient building so we could keep, and you saw the things we did to try to mitigate the massing of the building. So those things are taken into account.
Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Alan Cody. I live on Chestnut Street, and I and others on Chestnut Street and some of Short Street for years have had house guests and people who come to meetings at our homes park on Short Street because there's really no place to safely park on Chestnut. So how will we do that if you close Short Street?
That, I don't have an answer for that. That would become an issue.
Where your guests park, who are visiting me.
I'm going to take people who are up here asking questions. No, you know what? Look, this is the only way I can do this. It's not fair. They're standing up. If you want to ask a question, get in line.
Okay, well, let me follow up.
Sure,
What
go ahead.
are you going to do about this? Take this into consideration. This is a major hardship for people who live on the busy streets.
I hear you. First, I've heard of this, and we'll give it some thought. I can't promise anything, but I understand the question. Next question.
Hi, I'm Ann Blessington. I'm at 543 Chestnut, so I am on the corner of Oakville and Chestnut. And I assume you are aware, but it is a private way owned by 6 families here, and I'm not quite sure how you're going to address that with the traffic.
Sorry, did you say that Short, we were referring to? No.
Oakville, they own Oakville. It's a
Okay.
private way. There's 6 families, and I wasn't quite sure. You're talking about the hazard there, but since we own it, what are you thinking about the traffic flow? I mean, it is a private way.
Yeah, I mean, when we were talking about the safety issue, it was at right in the intersection, which I believe is owned by the city, the intersection itself. And so we're looking at, what can be done within the area that's
But are
city
you
owned.
trying to use that street?
No more than it currently is. I mean, obviously it's used to some level today. I think what we're doing is going to encourage access through what we hope will be a new intersection at Chestnut and Beacon, an improved intersection. So that would be what we're shooting for, is to encourage activity in that direction more.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, you
How are
may.
we going to discourage the new tenants from using our road?
There's any number of ways that it can be accommodated, through signs, through a restrictive thing in your lease that suggests you can only go a certain way. We could also design the exit from the site to require a left turn as opposed to a potential for a right turn. So there are many opportunities available, and I think working with the city and others will come up with the best one.
Okay. We are actually working with the city as well. So thank you.
Next question.
Lee Feldman, 24 Fredano Road. First, thank you for this detailed presentation. I think I have what is a pretty simple question for Michael, which is, if it becomes clear that this community is wildly opposed to this project, do you still plan on going forward with the project?
So I think that once we are able to take everyone's opinions and evaluate all of the neighborhood, which I think we've done a pretty good job. We've brought in a numerous amount of groups where we've had a lot of different input, and we've taken a lot of consideration towards the changes of what we're presenting to you tonight. I think we'll evaluate it, but right now, yes, we will proceed with the project. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback, even though you have some a room of negative. It always seems as if nobody with a positive or a complete positive outlook will come and support a project, especially on a beautiful night in the middle of May. So as of right now, yes, we will proceed, but we will definitely take in all the input that everyone here gives us and the feedback, and we'll take that into consideration.
Dave Beller, Windsor Road. The architect indicated that he was using materials and tried to develop a design that would be compatible with the neighborhood and produce a house. I think he referred to it as a very large house that looked like it might fit in with the neighborhood. That seems to me like having a birthday party for your 7-year-old child and telling the other children to come with a yellow shirt and blue pants, and then Shaquille O'Neal walks in with a yellow shirt and blue pants and doesn't quite fit in even though he's wearing the right materials and has the same appearance as everybody else, but he's just a little bit larger than everybody else there. In fact, he's larger than everybody else assembled. So my question is, you mentioned trying to use, that this is an efficient design, and you said you look at other possibilities in terms of designing the structure, but it seems to me that by its very size, it cannot fit into this neighborhood.
Well, what I will tell you is, this is a 36-unit apartment building. We looked at it first as being a rectangular building, 3 floors, either a flat roof or a pitched roof. That was our first take at this. And we looked at it, and we even shared that as a preliminary idea. And we all kind of looked and said, that's a big box. But how can that we have 36 apartment units? What are things we can do to mitigate that kind of big box look? And that's why we did the things we did. There are 2 units that are in the roof that have dormers that look out the back. That was a way that we could get some of the massing out. And just, it is a large structure. It's a 36-unit apartment building. There's no getting around that. But it is, therefore, what are things you do to help soften and make that more into that residential fabric? So that's what I can tell you.
Okay, so you're trying to address the issue of producing a big box, and you're addressing one of those issues, which is the box, the shape, the size, the appearance, but you're not addressing the issue of the big, which will make it stick out like a sore thumb. It does not fit in with the other architecture in the neighborhood, and it cannot by virtue of this current design. It's not a bad design, it just doesn't belong in this area.
My name is Nathan Eisenberg, I live on Collins Road. I'm curious about the parking situation. I know that we have the T nearby. Is it necessary to have as much parking as you have built in, or could you consider that the tenants could rent the apartment based on the idea that they can use the T and have less traffic?
Yeah, let me go get one shoe. It's a good question because we've gone back and forth in the parking. Let me talk first, just to go over the parking that we are proposing. We're proposing, and there's a little bit, I'll explain the dilemma here. We're showing a total of 106 spaces, okay? Now, of those 106, there are 48 spaces allocated for the townhouse units. They each have 2 garage spaces. There are also 2 spaces that are stacked parking in front. We look at those, you can back those 24 out because they're not really full parking spaces, they're really there for a visitor. So you could say that rather than having that 48, there's 24, but they have the ability to have a guest pull in. I frankly think that's probably the better way to present it. We then have allocated 1 space for each of the studios in the larger building, 1.5 spaces for the 1-bedroom units, which gets you to 21 spaces, and we've allocated 1.5 spaces for the 2-bedroom units, and then we have a number of guest spaces. You know, my experience in the city is that very often you don't need as many spaces. I happen to live at the Arbor Point development at Woodland T Station. I know that after that building was built, the developer Ted Tye went back to the city because he had a surplus of spaces and got permission to make a deal basically with Newton Wellesley so they could use those spaces during the day. We may not need these many spaces. What we want to be very careful about, though, is we don't want our guests spilling over onto the neighborhood streets. But the parking spaces, it's something we can talk to the planning department. This is an area we're happy to have some input, and if we felt that people really wanted fewer spaces, that's something we can talk about.
I think that makes sense. I just think that as we build it, they will come. If you look at a place and you see it doesn't have as many spaces as you want, then you might not rent it there. Then you might, so if you build in that many spaces, the people who have that many cars will come. So I do understand you don't want the overflow going into the other parts of the town, but it still will happen because people always fill up the traffic, and that's how it always works. So
I think it's a very fair question. That's something we can continue to have dialogue about.
Hi, my name is Troy Brocker, and I live at 587 Chestnut Street, which is the little gray box in the lower right-hand corner. My question, I have a couple.
Sure.
First of all, I mean, I appreciate everyone's concern about the traffic, and thank you for coming and presenting your side of the story. It takes a lot of courage to get up and ramble off some statistics that you believe present your side of the story. So, with regards to something that hasn't been brought up yet, I know that I've heard stories of a construction issue that took place on Montclair with regards to the water table and water flow underneath that property. I was there when someone did soil samples and things. What I'd like to know, especially as a direct abutter, how much study has really taken place and what remediation are you willing to commit to if a problem develops? That's the first question. The second question is...
You know what, we'll take the second. Let's answer it first. You still have the mic.
Good evening. At this time, we haven't done any soil testing, but these designs are, basically don't have basements. I mean, they're all built at grade. Presently, the site is almost entirely paved, and we'll actually have a reduction in pavement in solid areas. So the drainage will be reduced just for the fact that there won't be as much pavement. And there will be some soil testing done because the city will require us to do some on-site drainage just to mediate any impacts. But any drainage we put in will be a reduction in the front property, but the city does have a drain line that runs right through it where presently all the drainage goes. So we'll be able to evaluate that and do some testing and make sure that we don't have any impact.
And when will we find
the process? So when we get to actually doing the utility designs.
Which would approximately be when?
In the next month. In the next month.
In the next month. Okay. The second question I had is that, you know, Mr. Buckleiner has represented his client for, you know, the majority of the evening. And most of the people in this room, myself certainly, we had one neighbor. There was a church. This is going to change things. The primary person responsible for what happens, our new neighbor, is Mr. Buckleiner, or is Mr. Argyros. What I'd like to know is, the talk is high-end apartments. What, if Mr. Argyros could respond to this question, what is his background? You've talked about yours as being a member of the community for 60 years, or close to it. What is Mr. Argyros' background? What has he done? What are his previous developments like? And has he ever attempted something this big or this high class? And if he has examples, I think we'd all like to hear about it, to be reassured that what he does will actually come to fruition.
So, So my background is we have a fairly good sized retail and residential development company. Majority of our developments on the residential side have been single family, very high-end homes in and around Newton and Chestnut Hill. We've done a subdivision project on Heath Street where we purchased an old Victorian home and replaced it with 4 very high-end homes in the middle of what I think everyone would consider the recession back in '09 through late part of 2011. Those homes were all very, very high-end. When we talk high-end, interiors with, significant amount of moldings, crown ceilings, high-end appliances, kitchens that have, all of the contemporary style flair, which we tend to, inputting into these units, having very, very high-end finishes. With regards to, currently we have 2 projects, including this one, another project in West Roxbury that is going to be on a very similar level, very high-end units. We're in the process of presenting that in front of the BRA in the next 60 days for approval from the City of Boston. And then on the other side of it, which doesn't really represent anything here, we've built a significant amount of retail commercial projects throughout Boston, as far up as Ellsworth, Maine, and as far south as Miami, Florida. So that's the history that I have. I take a lot of pride in the construction. I take a lot of pride in the projects that we present. We have taken here, unbeknownst to I think a lot of people here, we've taken over, I think we're at like 14 months right now from the beginning of its design phase of this particular project, and then taking it first to the city, getting input from aldermen, alderwomen, then taking it to abutting neighbors in very small groups, taking that input, going back to the drawing board, resizing up the project to, I think we were originally at 68 or 62 units, I think 68, then we went to 62 units and found that it was, the density was very, very high there. It was difficult traffic. We were having difficult really making it work to a point where, taking the traffic into consideration, taking in the design elements, taking in the structure and styles of the townhouses, for example, on Karen Road, we've really made a significant amount of changes. We originally had 4 structures with 3 units each. Found those 4 structures not to be conducive. They looked similar to just salt boxes. So we removed those and went with 3 structures, 4, 5, and 3 units, and it all gives it just a complete different character. With regards to the larger building, we originally came in with a design that, quite frankly, a lot of pushback. It was traditional garden-style apartment building. A lot of brick, had really no character. It was something that we felt, was originally we thought would get some acceptance because it had a lot of characteristics and similarities to the church. After our meetings, we found that a lot of the neighbors weren't really as concerned as to what we thought we would get as a concern to what, the end result of the church would be. So from there, we actually kind of diverted away from having an apartment building that was very similar to a church and utilizing the aspects and the characteristics of the church. So we then went to this particular style, and we've changed it. We originally had a building that was all 3 stories and took in feedback and actually gave it some character and reduced the outsides of the building to 2 stories. And, we were able to put 2 units up with dorms, as Steve mentioned, up in the attic. So this project actually has taken us 14 months to get to you. And obviously, we're unable to absorb everyone's opinions, but we've taken a lot of time and effort. I think we've met with Alessandra in planning 3 times, 2-3 times, to be able to get, input as to the current status of where we are to be able to get to here tonight. So, it's my intention here. We're doing an apartment building because it's a pride of ownership project for me. I think Waban, you know, I won't say deserves a project of this style, because everyone is going to say that the density and the size of it is overwhelming. But I think at the end of the day, we're looking to provide a project that gives very high-end, gives the ability for people that are living in the large mansions of Waban and the west side of Newton, the ability to downsize into single level living in the apartments, and then be able to downsize and get away from the aggravations of snow removal and landscaping, and have the ability to have a 3-bedroom style townhome in the backside of a neighborhood of Newton that everyone's accustomed to living in Newton throughout the years. So that's where we are. That's my history, my background, and where we've come to evolve into this project. If there's anything else I can ask or answer?
I'll try to make it a much shorter this time. I'm not sure if my question was really answered, and that's, where are your other apartment buildings? What other properties do you currently own that are apartment buildings that are anything like this, not under development or under proposal? Because I think I've heard aspects of your reputation that I don't want to believe just based upon rumor. What I think everybody should be able to do is look at the places that you do own, see how they're run, and if that's the neighbor that you're going to be, we can make an assessment based on that.
So we currently own a portfolio of about 300 units in and around West Roxbury. We have some new units in Boston. We have a pretty good sized portfolio in Florida. We manage that out of our offices in Norwood.
Do you have anything currently finished?
Currently finished with this statute, no. We're in the process of
you're not
developing.
experienced with something like this?
It's not a matter of managing apartments is an experience in itself. It doesn't have any issue whether it's a $1,200 apartment or if it's a $4,000 apartment. I think we're utilizing a caliber of people that can afford and live in these style units. Units that will be $2,800 to $3,500, $4,000. Those are the type of people that we're entrancing ourselves on.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Diane Levy. I also live on Oakvale, and all of us residents of Oakvale are very, very concerned about this. We are already cut through. Hundreds of trucks have gone through to help with the construction on Karen Road in the past 10 years. It's very nice that you've presented these good-looking buildings, but that is only part of the concern of this group. And I think the larger concern is the fact that you've taken a lot that was meant to have 6 houses, approximately 25 people and 12 cars, and you're trying to put 100 to 200 people, 100 cars going in and out all the time, transient people, not homeowners. It doesn't mean that's not a class judgment. The point is that they're not homeowners. We don't know how they're going to take care of their property, but we do know that they're going to be driving through our street all day. And we would like to know why you can't make the exit to this proposal go out on Beacon Street instead of going into the Waban Valley, which will inevitably happen. That's what we've been calling that area. If you allow any turns onto Karen Road, why can't it exit onto Beacon Street? Thank you.
And Randy's continuing to look at that, and we again have looked at the possibility of going a left-hand turn and avoiding people going to the right. Yes, sir.
Thank you for presenting.
There are all kinds of challenges to try to make an exit at the Beacon Street, not the least of which is that Short Street exists and you have to cross it in order to make that connection.
Well, you can turn right from Montclair right now onto Beacon Street. Why can't they continue doing that?
Understood. I mean, there are all kinds of issues. There are grade issues, other factors that play here. It will be very difficult to make such a connection work in an efficient manner and not cause other issues in the process. And that's what we struggle with. We have to be respectful of what's there and improve, not disprove any of the current configuration.
I don't see any consideration happening for the people who live in those streets behind. Zero.
That's a fair statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry Glover, 17 Wall Road. Larry Clutter, 17 Wild Road. As any respected atmospheric scientist today can tell us, these greenhouse gas pollutants are doing unacceptable damage to our children's future. With that in mind, there's really two points I would like to ask about, and that's one is rooftop solar installation, potential for that, or any plans that you might have for that.
Let's answer that question with the group.
Well, that's a good one, and there is some consideration about the studying the aspect of what the capabilities are for rooftop solar, whether it be PV or solar hot water, because of the orientation there. Part of that, and it's a balance there between the appearance of that as well as what all you generate. But we're taking a look.
Okay, so then secondly, there's a, I'm sure you're probably aware, there's a water table, likely it's still quite near. At one time there was a lake where the large Lincoln playground and park area is. And would you be looking into some sort of, geothermal heat pump in particular to capture some of that potential energy which is lying just under the surface?
At this point, we hadn't considered it just because geothermal is normally in regards to a single source or a single building kind of attitude versus having wells for 36 individual apartment units that's dedicated to that. That's a lot of wells you'd be drilling, something like that. The idea of PVs there that's generating electricity, that's a little bit more tangible. Thank you.
There are several homes, I believe, in that area that have, that's one of the advantages of having a state home, that they can then exploit some land area and draw that energy.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Hi, Bruce Sinisi. I live on Paulson Road. This woman already asked my question, which is, Paulson Road's a pass-through street, which I discovered about a day after moving in 30 years ago. Cars literally fly down there 40, 50 miles an hour, and there's a four-corner stop sign on Paulson and Evelyn, where kids walk to school. No one stops there, no matter what time of the day. And so my question concerning that is, inevitably, it's already a pass-through street you mentioned. And it's going to be more of a pass-through street, I assume. And I think trying to do something after the fact, we tried on my street trying to get speed bumps, and they said no, because emergency vehicles can't get through there. You would have to do, in my opinion, something sooner rather than after the development, otherwise it's just not going to happen. That's my first question. How would you address that?
I mean, just in general terms, cut-through activity is usually a product of intersections, major intersections that don't work as well as they can. And that's why people go the shortest route they can. If there's a backup, you can avoid it, you do it, especially in this area. Everybody does. The goal here would be to try to improve on that, or participate in what would be an improvement. And I think with the improvement that I referenced tonight, if that were put in place, I think everyone would see a tremendous betterment in terms of the time savings to get through this intersection, particularly during the critical periods. And that means from a pedestrian and vehicular perspective. And you don't want to leave out the pedestrians. I think there's a lot of pedestrian activity that needs to be accommodated in this particular area.
I know I walk my dogs on Chestnut, I'm really scared. But, and my second question, the gentleman prior, he mentioned the pride of ownership. If I'm the only person who doesn't know the answer, forgive me. Why rental versus ownership?
And Michael, you'll correct me if anything
I'm
is...
sorry, there's another one. He also mentioned that there's a lot of high-end houses in West Newton, those people looking to, move to downsize. The assumption that they wouldn't want to rent versus buy, is that an opinion, or is there some kind of study to show there's a market for that?
Let me take the first one. I know that we had an extensive discussion originally with Michael as to rental versus condominium ownership. Michael really wanted a rental property. He wants a property that can remain in his family wants it to be a legacy for his kids, and we also think there's a need for it in the community. And one of the things, if you notice, that a lot of the units in the larger building, they're relatively modest-sized units. So they're intended to serve a need for people who don't have those options. I don't know if Michael's done a market study or not, but he's very comfortable that he's going to be able to rent those townhouses for a very significant rent. Michael, you were thinking $5,000? 4 or 5? Yeah. He thinks it's not going to be difficult to rent those 12 units.
Someone with that type of money would also be able to purchase something that would be cheaper for them in the long run.
That's just a lifestyle. That's a lifestyle choice. I know a lot of people personally who rent here because they have places in Florida. They spend 6 or 8, 9 months down there. They come back here for 3 months. They don't want another ownership. But it's just a personal thing.
So they would rent for 3 months, those people?
No. They would rent for the year.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Hobson, and I live at 128 Dorset Road. I wasn't here for the beginning of the presentation, but I have been part of those meetings that you've had with smaller groups of neighbors, and I just want to say that I like what I see. There are obvious traffic and congestion challenges that you seem very aware of, and that we're going to need to be vigilant about, and you're going to work with the city. I also know that this isn't the last time anyone will be able to pass judgment on this project. I mean, the ZBA process is a whole other process, and inevitably there will be more changes there. I think what I hear a lot of is fear of change. I hear, well, I frankly hear fear of the people who might be about to live there. Am I not allowed to say?
You can say anything you want.
It seems to me that other people sort of spoke their mind, and it's besides Nancy, I'm the only one that's gotten up here, and so I feel like I'm not going to go on and on, but I like it for the need it serves in the city in terms of the type of housing you're bringing here. I'm not afraid of the possible residents. I love that it's partly affordable. And this kind of dense housing is exactly what we need close to transit hubs. And so I'm glad about it. I feel for the people on Karen Road. And I hope that as much can be done to mitigate, the upset in their lives during construction as possible. But I think the end product will be better than a parking lot that they look out right now, for example. So I'm inclined to like it, and I just wish people would keep their minds open and not be determined to shut it down. Thank you. I actually have no question. Thank you for listening.
I'm 33 over. My question has to do with fabric, and Steve mentioned in an attempt to meet the fabric of the existing single-family homes, matching materials and colors. But one of the other parts of fabric is density, and there's a mass, and then there's an open space, and then there's a mass and an open space, and a lot of the single-family homes as ranches, there's even open space above the house, and you can see the trees behind it. If you go to the site plan, could you go to the site plan? Thank you. And you look at the Karen Road line, there's a lot of mass and not a lot of open space. And
you're talking about right here.
Yeah, the alleys basically. And then another thing is, you gave a rendering of the 36-unit structure from the Short Street side. Could you provide a rendering or an elevation on the Karen Street side.
Yes.
Because it would probably look a little different. Thank you. So the question is, can you, if the way to really reach an assimilated fabric is not material, which I think you've done nice moves, but it's to reduce, if the way to assimilate the fabric is to reduce the density, would you be willing to do that? Michael? If the way to assimilate the fabric of the development is to reduce the density of the overall development, is that an option you're willing to look at? Especially if, I think that, I'm not looking for a hand clap, I'm just looking for a raise of hands. I think the majority of the people here do find issue with the density.
Yeah. I'm just going to say this, I think Michael's already said it. For right now, today, this moment, I think the answer is no. Is it possible that we take a look at this and reconsider? The answer may be yes. It also may depend, though, on the reaction we get with respect to the rest of the project. So I'd say it's something we'll think about, we'll be open about, but as of now, I would say no.
Thank you.
So I'm Elizabeth Brocker from 587 Chestnut. It's in a square building, house that is in on the corner. And I appreciate the comment about Karen Road, but there's also two of us on Short, well, technically on Chestnut, but access our house via Short Street. And so it's going to affect Karen, it's going to affect us too. What you haven't shown is a rendering with our houses next to that building. So that's very deceiving. That's a really high, not high density, high height building. We've talked about this since last fall when we met, and it still has never been addressed. You can still go up, you never consider. In fact, one of the first renderings didn't have the gables, and so it was actually a lower roof. And so the soft spots add height and great dimension. This is something that you say it's probably not going to be considered now, but maybe in the future. That has been your talk all the way along, and in the very beginning when you asked what we wanted, and we said, well, we'd love, single-family units, and you said that's absolutely off the table, not an option. So somewhere in between, I get that. It's just coincidental that I happen to be at the two comments later, and it wasn't in reaction to, I didn't get your name, who was in support of the project. But I have to say I'm a bit resentful of your comment today in the TABS article that started with this community being resistant to 40B. Because I don't hear that here tonight. I've heard two possible comments that may have spun that way. But this is not the primary issue of our conversation tonight. Our conversation is about scale and density. And personally, I'm very aware of what happened on the other side of Dear Waban. And that was about 40B, or it became made about 40B. And I don't want this to be, because we are a community that respects that. What is frustrating to me is you want to play and put that up first. And that's not our first issue. And so I'd love to hear more from Michael directly and less from his lawyer.
Next question.
Well, I'm Sue Jacobson, and I live past the burgeoning school toward New Wellesley. So the Shelby, but which is off of Varick, but it sort of doesn't matter because wherever you are in Waban, you're on Beacon Street. And there have been a lot of comments about the traffic flow, so you're fully aware of that. I was interested in your projected numbers, however. What do you see as your development costs for the structures that you've laid out? And also, if you could just review, I know you mentioned some income levels, cost levels for those people buying townhouses versus the renters. Could you just give us those tiers, please?
So
rental cost. They're all rental. So townhouse and apartments, all rental. I didn't understand. So nobody's buying?
No.
Everybody's renting?
No, they're all rentals. We don't have a rental structure in place as of yet. The construction figures we'll have to get back in. I'll get those over to Kathy to winter disseminate through them. We don't have them on our fingertips.
Be very helpful.
Okay.
Hi, Danny Rushlag. I live on 15 Ferdinand Road. I have 2 comments and 1 question. My first comment is I don't see how you can do a valid traffic study with Ainger School not being in function right now. You said it would, if it opened in the fall, that would be sufficient. Well, it's not opening until the winter break of January, February of 2016. But I think for a valid traffic study, that has to be taken into consideration because there are a lot of young kids that live exactly in that triangle. The second comment is, and we just said this isn't about 40B, but what I find unfortunate is that the vehicle of 40B is being used. According to the tab, you're only putting 10 40B units there. As Mrs. Hobbs so eloquently stated, I don't think most of us are afraid of those people, but there's only going to be 10 of those units there, yet you're putting 36 other units in there that are not 40B, and you're selling it as the high-end Wabanite. So this is more a comment for the alderman. And my question is, what are you going to do if the 40B application is either denied or the city finds that it has met its quota? What's your plan moving forward?
We'll just regroup and we'll consider options.
And what would those options be?
Don't know right now. Right now we're in the 40B track. We're going to run this through until we hit a brick wall. And then we'll go back and consider other options if we have to.
All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jim Kanoki. I live on Oakdale Road as well. I have a question to everybody in the room because this is more about the character of the place and we talk about preserving the character of the neighborhood. I'd just like to see a show of hands of how many people have taught their kids to ride their bike, taught their grandkids how to ride their bike in that church parking lot.
Teach them to drive their car, too.
Now, there is nothing else in the community like that. And there's nothing here that can replace that. That's all.
Thank you.
My name is David Rochelle. I'm at 63 Windsor Road, and I like you more, Steve, when you sold me my house. You didn't sell me, but you represented my house for this beautiful neighborhood. And so my wife and I have been here for 15, 16 years. This is a fantastic place to live. It's Disneyland. It's a wonderful community. And I'm just, as I looked at this, we now live in Windsor Road. There are 36 houses on Windsor Road. 36 for the entire road. Big houses, right? But there's going to be more density in this very small space. It just doesn't feel right. It isn't consistent with the place that you ultimately sold, at least represented me when I was here locally. And I think it's about that character. This is Mayberry. This is a place that you should preserve. This is an unbelievable gem. And this is not about, Michael, you and your kids and having a legacy for a rental property. It's not. It's about the people that live here. And to be frank, I'm not opposed to change. Right? Change is okay. Moderately. Doing it correctly. Doing it within the community. And to be leveraged with 40B for whatever it feels like, because that's what it feels like to me. For a massive approach does not sit well. So I just wanted to share that with you and suggest that if you want to work with the community about a more moderate approach, I think everybody would be supportive of that. So that's all
Okay, I'm Nate Chapman. I'm 81. I lived here for 45 years in Waban. I'm the poor guy across the street from the parking lot, where all the action is going to take place. Okay, we set that straight. Now also, 40B, we're not a prejudice group. I want to remind a few people that we had over 400 Metro kids here. My wife and I were Metro parents, This is not a community of prejudice. Let's get that straight. So don't let anybody play games with 40B with us. Okay? Now why didn't you just say you build high-end houses? Why didn't you decide to build some nice high-end houses on that property? Was it not profitable enough? Is that the problem? Is it heart versus pocketbook, or what goes on here? I'd like to hear.
Michael made a decision. Michael bought the property. He's making a decision as to what he wants to do with it. That's the simple answer. Next question.
Yeah, hi, my name is Mark Dorfman. I live on Pine Ridge Road. This project affects me, but doesn't really affect me. But sitting here listening tonight, the way some people are talking, be snide and snicker, it's just really, it's not, it's disgusting.
Thank you.
My name is Dorothy Roberts. I live at 1564 Beacon Street in the house where I was raised. My husband and I both grew up in Waban. Our 3 sons live with us. Our 2 grandchildren live with us. I naively assumed that when you bought the property that you put in McMansions that seemed to be the in thing to be doing all over Newton and Brookline and other prestigious areas. I don't think that you're doing it for the benefit of us other than your pocketbook and your children. I think what you're doing is in massive scale and belongs in an area that has more open space to it. I think you're being misrepresenting the facts and saying a space and a half per unit. Does that mean half a car? Certainly if you have 48 units, it's conceivable that some few people might not have a car, others might have 2, others might have 3. And the amount of traffic that is already congested on Beacon Street and Chestnut Street now, the roads can't handle it. And I would hope that people realize throughout Newton and throughout the areas, I'm not opposed to 40B projects. I do think that the law needs to change when you can charge $5,000 a month for a unit and get credit for 48 units when only 10 are actual units that will serve the lower income of our society.
Hi, I'm Peter Khalil from Pine Ridge Road. We also agree that this project will be highly detrimental to the character of the neighborhood due to its scale and density. You didn't put in your diagrams and renderings up there what the setbacks will be from the street of this gigantic apartment building. You had it shown next to Short Street. So is Short Street going to be eliminated or not? Because you made a reference to the traffic coming out on Short Street as an option, the traffic person did. And that's related to my other question, which is the following. You stated that green space was going to be one of your, or is one of your objectives in your design of the project. So there doesn't seem to be much green space here. Where's the green space? And could you just be specific in what the setback will be? And can you give us an idea of what the buildings will look like, this site plan superimposed on the aerial view? So you're not showing them what the buildings are going to look like in the aerial view, or
okay, so we don't have that drawing with us, but I think we could probably create that. So answer those questions. The setback here is 35 feet. This one's 15 feet 7 inches. This is 17 feet 3 inches. That's from the property line. This one's 20 feet 1 inch. This one is from this corner to this property line is 25 feet. The closest place here, at this corner of the building here to here is 25 feet. So that's going to give you the
at the top right, I think there's a 10-foot to the townhouse on here.
Cherry Road on the far.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean to skip that. That's 10 feet there, and so I think I hit all the ones there. The comment about green space was, right now you have pavement that goes all the way out to the sidewalk here, all the way out here. So the comment about reducing the amount of paved area in relationship landscape was in the comment about getting front yards, walks, getting side yards. All this area that I'm kind of outlining here that's going to be green is area that right now is pavement.
Yes, sir.
My name is Bob Barger. I live on Pine Ridge Road. Make no mistake about it, I may not be Mr. Rogers, but this is my neighborhood. And because I live on Pine Ridge and it's not being built next door to me, that doesn't mean I'm any less concerned about it than the people who live on Karen and the people who live on Beacon who do have it looming over them. But I'm not here to make any particular disparaging comments. What I'm curious about is what the demographic projections are. We've heard a lot about bricks and mortar, we've heard a lot about streets and cars. I haven't heard anything about the people who are going to live here. How many are there going to be? What's their age range and breakdown? How many families? How many singles? How many school-age children? What's the distribution of school-age children? How many of them are going to move into the Angel School, which is currently under construction to accommodate a certain number of children who I don't believe were, this development was accounted for at the time Angel was put into construction. So what are your figures on that?
We don't have any of those projections.
So you're telling me you're going to build 48 units of housing, and you have no clue in the world who's going to live there, right?
We have a rough sense, but we don't have the kind of breakdown you're looking for, and it's also going to be quite a ways in the future. So that'll get defined as we get closer. I hear your question. I'm just being honest. We don't have an answer.
Okay. Well, I guess it comes the presumptuous part, and perhaps since you're coming into our neighborhood, and hopefully to some extent we're prepared to welcome you into it, what type of facilities will there be in the property that will be available for community use?
Well, the only thing that we've talked about, and this would involve, if Short Street were to be closed, we had talked about taking that area, making green, and creating a park there. But that presumes that would work from a traffic point of view. There's really no other amenities on the site. As you know from looking at the site, we're not going to have tennis courts, not going to have a swimming pool. There's no other. I'm going to make this next gentleman the last speaker. That's it. No, two more. These two people, I'm then going to, adjourn the meeting, but we will stick around for a bit if people want to come up informally and ask some questions. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Jim Epstein. I live on Manchester Road, Ireland. I was curious when you made the statement that you're going full speed ahead until you hit a brick wall. I was wondering that if the people that live here, that own property, that have their highest investment here, and it's going to probably reduce their value of their real estate, and you're taking advantage of the park like a parasite using the park. I'm wondering whether, this is to the alderman too, I'm wondering whether opposition of the people that live here would have any bearing on you backing off on this.
Probably not. Next question.
Not as fancy. I'm Kulani, and I live on Fuller Street, just not exactly right next door to where you're running this. I think I look a little different from people who've been standing up here and speaking, but I want to say that it has been wonderful to live in this area. I am concerned, I think like everybody else here, about the density that is going to go up. The street I live in is also a cut-through street, and we have big homes in that area, but the neighbors watch out for each other because we've had break-ins, we've had cars broken into that were left in the driveway, things taken out of garages, and these are safe neighborhoods. Suddenly, when you go up so much in terms of population density, have you done an assessment of what would be the safety factor for the homes around it? It's simple things. Your FedEx, your UPS, you go out, you don't actually alarm the house each time, you leave your car unlocked. I mean, is there any assessment of what would be the implications for people in that neighborhood?
No, I don't think we've done a safety assessment.
Would that be part of a plan that you might do?
Not sure. It's something we have to think about. Lynn, this is the very last speaker.
Thank you very much. My name is Christopher Pitts. I'm on the Waban Area Council. I live on Beacon Street, also on the Waban Improvement Society. And some of you may know me from doing some of the future planning that we've been trying to do. And one of the goals of that is to sort of connect with a lot of the data points, to understand how things are connected. So while you're all here, this is a good chance. When I was curious, how many of the meetings that you had with the community, how many people here tonight were part of those meetings? Okay, good. That's good. I just wanted to give a couple data points because people asked me to compare. So the front building that you're proposing here is about 1,000 square feet short of the Anger that was just torn down. Okay, just for scale, okay? And also, it's 47 feet tall, which is 3 feet taller than the current Anger's 3rd floor. Okay, because people are coming up to me and saying, Anger is so big. You know, so the drawings sometimes don't communicate what it is. So those are just data points, okay? Well, okay. Lee, who lives in my old house, on Ferdinand. So the current, just the front building that they're proposing to tear down, fill up, and put up, is about 1,000 square feet short of the Anger that was just torn down, cubic. And it's at 47 feet tall. It's the current Anger's 3rd floor is 44 feet tall. Okay, so it's a little taller. You know, for the roof part, okay, so let's be fair. Lastly, for a data point, I was just curious, as presented, this plan right here, how many people, by a show of hands, approve of this? 1, 2. Approve, okay, you like this plan, okay? Okay. And just to make sure, how many disapprove of the plan as it's been presented? Okay, so that's a data point for you and me. Here's another one. How about if this was a plan which preserved the current church, okay, and had about half as many units? How many would approve of something like that? It's a good data point. How many would disapprove of that? Half as many units. Of half as many units and preserving the church,